So we will go ahead and call to order at 3:11 the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee meeting. The next thing we'll do is, Norma, if you'll swear in our new member, Reverend Quincy Randall.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Pastor, if you would stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Quincy Randall,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office of
the duty of the office of
the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee
the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee
of the City of Odessa,
of the City of Odessa,
State of Texas,
State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States.
and of the state.
The last part,
And of this state,
and of the state.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Pastor Randall, we're glad to have you on board. We all introduced ourselves and told a little bit about each other when we were all sworn in last month. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just kind of go around and reintroduce ourselves so you'll know who all's on the committee.
All right. Well, I'm Pastor Randall. I am the pastor of the New Mount Zion Baptist Church in Colorado City. Also the pastor of the New Dimensions Worship Center Church here in Odessa. I've been married about 23 years. I have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. And I'm just happy to be a part of this advisory committee.
All right. We're glad to have you on board. My name's John Landgraf. I was elected chair last month. I've been in the consulting engineering business here in Odessa for over 40 years and been real active in a lot of community involvement and different things, and just looking forward to helping the city move forward with the capital improvements. Mike, we just go down the list. Mike Withrow. You're muted, Mike.
And so you can take that down if you want to.
That's Mike Withrow, Basin Abstract and Title. Been in the community for over 30 years. I'm president of the title company here. Watched the community grow from days whenever there was no Sam's or Walmart or any of that stuff. So looking forward to this situation that we're getting ready to all evaluate, and look forward to helping us move forward for the future.
Philly?
Yes, sir. My name is Filiberto Gonzalez, and I'm a State Farm agent here in Odessa. Been living here most of my life, past city council member, and really looking forward to being a part of this team. I think this is really going to help the city as far as, finding out what we really need to do and help the community keep growing the way it is.
Okay, thank you, Philly. How about Joe?
I'm Joe Hurt, president of Pcip Fabrication, and I manage land on Ratliff Ranch, and I'm looking forward to what we can do to build infrastructure for the community.
Thank you, Joe. Richard?
Richard Pierce, been in the community over 50 years. Plumbing service manager, First Service AC Contractors. And I'm looking forward to doing what the field of Odessa. Love to see us grow.
And we've got quite a few city staff members on. So that Pastor Randall understands who all those players are. Vanessa, since you're host, you want to start that, please?
Sure. Vanessa Ramirez, I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works and Utilities, and so you'll be getting quite a few information from myself and Vera Hernandez. And
Okay.
I'll go ahead. Farrah Hernandez is our CIP coordinator. I'm Thomas Kerr. I'm the Director of Public Works and Utilities. Gloria Gonzalez is our contract supervisor with the utilities area. Hal Feldman is our transportation engineer, traffic engineer. Joe Tucker is assistant city engineer, and Yervon Hamayakin is the city engineer.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Cindy Muncie was on a while. It's an assistant city manager. Philip Uridia is on at times. Phil's on also as assistant city manager, and then Michael Marrero, who is the city manager, may join us as he can.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. That's great. And then John Atkins with Kimley Horn. We'll get to him in a minute, but go ahead, John. Introduce yourself and your team members.
I sure will. Yeah, my name's John Atkins with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm the project manager for this particular project that the city has asked us to be a part of. Also have, and my focus is predominantly on the water and wastewater utility side of the project. I also have, I'll go ahead and just introduce everybody so we don't have to toggle through everybody. But Connor Manley is also with us here. He's working with me and April Escamilla, who are both working on the water and wastewater side. There's April waving at us. And then John Green is with us. He's working on the roadway portion of the project along with Jeff Whitaker, who's on the project as well.
Okay.
So that's our team.
Thank you. And I see our city manager, Michael Marrero, has joined us. Thank you, Michael, for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you, John, and Pastor Randall, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, next point of business, the minutes from the November 13th meeting were sent out with the meeting notices and everything. Has everyone had a chance to review those? If so, I'll entertain a motion to accept them as submitted.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes are approved. Let's get right into the real meat of the meeting today, and I'll turn it over to John Atkins with Kimley Horn so we can talk about the land use assumptions and the impact fee capital improvements plan, which we've all been submitted drafts of. Take it away, Big John.
Okay, thank you, John. I am going to share a presentation with you all. I'm going to patience with me while I set up here appropriately. Okay, presentation itself. Can y'all see that on the screen?
I can't.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Okay, hang on.
Now,
We'll get this squared. Share.
I got it now.
Got it now?
Got it.
Got it.
Okay. We'll do some modification with all the little boxes that are all over my screens now here. I'm going to continue to keep. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and get started, and if something pops up or is an issue, y'all just let me know. Can y'all hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for serving on the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. Y'all have an important role, and we appreciate your efforts and diligence in providing us input and guidance that will eventually go to the City Council to help them make final decisions. We introduced the team members through John's request. So the next step is really our goal for this meeting is to walk through the land use assumptions and the impact fee capital improvements plan. Today, I want to walk through today's action items, the land use assumptions component of the project, the impact fee capital improvements plan component, and then lastly, the schedule. There'll be some points along the way where I'll stop and y'all can ask questions or provide comments, of course. So let's dive into the capital improvement advisory committee's action items. As you may recall from our previous meeting, the CIC has a very specific role during the adoption process that covers three main components: land use assumptions, impact fee capital improvements plan, and then reviewing the impact fees themselves. Today, we'll begin covering the land use assumptions and the impact fees plan. Focusing primarily today on reviewing the components of each, so that on the next meeting, we can focus on you providing written comments for the City Council. So with that in mind, let's review the components of the land use assumptions. All right, the origins of the land use assumptions originate back in 2016 with the Envision Odessa comprehensive plan, and then we took data with regards to land use assumptions that were generated in the Envision plan and then transitioned and utilized those in more detail for the water master plan, the wastewater master plan, and also the thoroughfare master plan. We're going to focus on land use assumptions today, the 10-year growth assumptions, and then the impact fee service areas. Okay, the map, the existing land use map that you see here in front of you today, limits go out to the 5-mile ETJ or extraterritorial jurisdiction. So what you're seeing on this map, the predominant colors, now the very exterior colors you see, kind of the pale yellow, are just undeveloped areas within the 5-mile ETJ. But with regards to existing land uses, what you see on the map, predominantly in yellow, is residential. The commercial areas are in red. The industrial areas are in kind of a purplish color. And these are obviously related to future developments that we are talking about. You do see some kind of lighter blue colors on the map that are more public and semi-public, which are things like county or city properties and or the school district properties and things of that nature. But the ones we kind of focus on here in this particular study are residential, commercial, and industrial land uses. Okay, so going back to Envision, consider this considers the future land use plan that was in Envision originally that you see. That's what this map is right here. So it's similar type look. The second map you see here is the ultimate land use plan that was utilized to develop the water and wastewater master plans. And you can see this still the same color combination here. It has a little bit more detail than your comprehensive plan. So if you place these side by side, you can do a comparison of the information. One thing you'll notice on the Envision plan, there's a large area to the west, about 30% of the acreage of this particular limits of this map, and another south area that doesn't have specific land uses. So you see kind of a grayed portion to the west, and then kind of a lighter color to the south that has no land use types delineated in the vision plan. So as we move to the water master plan, the wastewater master plan, and then the transportation plans, we needed to sit down with the planning and engineering department, and to be able to do the master planning components of those projects, we needed to identify and populate those unutilized areas or areas that weren't clearly identified in Envision with a land use type that allow us to apply growth and infrastructure accordingly. So that's why you see a more detailed map in the ultimate land use plan, and that's the plan that has moved forward. It's also in the impact fee study. Okay, this is a detail that breaks down those land uses by acreages and percentages. We don't have to walk through this in detail, but in summary, what it's telling you is 52.6% of the area that's in the study area is residential. As far as non-residential, it's 34.2% of the area. And then the difference between those two, the rest is public right of way. So like, you know, road area and future right of way that's already been designated that creates the 100% of the usage types within the area. This is a healthy economic mix that we see between residential and non-residential. So the community's land use plan is a good healthy mix between the two, and wanted to be able to illustrate that here and have y'all understand that the city's done a good job of mixing the balance between those. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there for a second and see if there's any questions from anybody on the advisory committee.
John, this is Tom Kerr.
Yes, sir.
I think you're about to move into it, but I was just going to make sure, as far as how this information is useful, is that what we were about to go into? I'm sorry.
Well, what we're going into next is the growth projection component. These areas would build out from a percent growth standpoint. So I think so if nobody has any particular specific questions on this particular map, I'm just going to continue to move forward. Okay. All right. 10-year growth assumptions. Okay. Out of the
It's okay, Beverly.
the Envision in 2016.
Beverly, don't be silly.
The projections for the Envision Odessa take a conservative approach and estimate about 1% compounded annual growth rate over the next 20 years. Knowing that, what we did was for the impact fee study that's also related to the current master plans that you have, we sat down with the planning and engineering staff and drilled down a little bit more on more of a variable growth throughout the city. That's what I wanted to walk through on how that's defined here and get y'all's response or input. So in this particular graph, you can see the green illustrates the more developed portions of the city, and it's a growth rate at about 0.5%. You go north up into the Peach area, you'll see a growth rate of about 0.75%. Now, as you travel more to the east and more the northern portion of the city, you see a 3% growth rate. And then finally, to the northeastern part of the city, we assume about a 4% growth rate. The resulting, when you combine those together, the resulting growth rate, average annual growth rate over the next 10 years is projected about 1.3%. So if you remember from when we initially started out the educational presentation last month, we talked about over the past 10 years, the city has grown at about a 2% annual growth rate. So we're a little bit of a balance between the conservative comments that were provided in the Envision document of 1%, and then what you've experienced over the last 10 years, about 2%. And so our projections kind of fall a little bit in the middle, with varying across the city that average out to about 1.3%. So I want to stop here and ask if you have any questions or comments, and does the group feel that this is a fairly reasonable growth rate to envision for the study for the next 10 years?
Hey, Mr. Atkins,
John,
this is Filiberto. On the projected growth rate, that 1.3%, how much does that equal out to in people? Do you know? Or, I mean, I just wanted to see a visual.
Yeah, I think I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine.
It's actually on one of these. It's actually on one of the slides, John. I think each year?
They said 100.
Yeah, you're starting at 124,000.
Right. Yeah, it may be in April. Can you see if you've got that?
I
Yes,
saw
I'm
that.
pulling it up.
I think the total is 140.
So like a rough number would be about 1,500 a year or something like that. Because that's an annual growth rate of 1.3%.
That's correct. And what
Yeah,
you,
it's about 26,000. It's over 10 years.
26,000. Okay.
Yeah, it's on page 9 of the other piece of paper that we had.
Okay. Thank you for that. And one more question, Mr. Atkins. On this picture that you have up on the 10-year growth assumptions, you see where that what do you call it? The county lines are at, and
right
between Ector and Midland. And obviously, we're growing into Midland County. I mean, that's a fact, and then that's something that's going to happen. Is it unheard of to partner up with the county of the following county, come up with a game plan to be able to, I guess, help out with some of the cost in this? Because the way I understand this, the growth that's going into Midland County is going to benefit tremendously by the taxes that are going to be created by this. Is that a true assumption, or?
Well, this is as far as partnerships, I know the city of Midland has already implemented impact fees. So they're now, if you're talking about a regional transportation and things of that nature, I know Tom Kerr and then even Jeff Whitaker from my team can talk kind of regionally how finances and partnerships of that nature can occur. With regards to this specific study, those kind of partnerships sit independent from what we're doing here. But if you would like Tom or Jeff to mention about those kind of partnership opportunities, they may be able to share something on that.
Okay. We can dig into that later on, but I was just kind of wondering. Okay, thank you.
John, this is Jimmy Goats. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'm seeing no real growth south. Is that true?
It's minimal. In the green area, that's what you're talking about. Now, we do show infrastructure, and I'll show you here in a little bit, we do show some infrastructure to the south and west, even though the growth rate on this particular exhibit is slower than other parts of the city.
And John, this is Tom Kerrigan, on some of that, would you also say that a significant portion of that area has already developed? And so 0.5% of growth in that area may be a little more than you would expect 0.5% to mean, because it's 0.5% based on an already developed kind of number. Although there is the growth down there is definitely slower than we see in some of the other areas.
Yeah, yes, to answer your question. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll continue on, and we'll can open up things to any area of conversation as we move forward. So I'm not preventing anybody from coming back to this if you want to further. So
one more comment, John, before it. I promised I wouldn't talk much, but I think one of the things is that this helps develop what kind of loading you need in terms of developing those capital plans. So how much water line do you need and those types of things. And y'all may already understand that and everything, but I just that having an idea of where our population goes and what type helps us develop what type of capital we need.
Right. And that's where we're heading here to talk about the capital plan. So I'll continue on if nobody has any additional questions on this specific issue. Okay. All right. Service areas. Okay, funds collected within a service area must be spent on projects within a same service area within 10 years. So what we're going to do is illustrate your roadway, water, and wastewater service areas that would be in the impact fee. There's some limitations by state law. So for roadway, the service area has to be limited to just your city limits. And then there's another stipulation that the service area can be no larger than 6 mile trip length. That's based on Chapter 395 of the Local Government Code. For water, we're able to, it's not limited, so we can use the land use study area map, so it's the whole area. Wastewater is as similar as water. So we'll illustrate those here in just a second. Okay, here's a map of the roadway service areas based on the city limits line and the restrictions of the 6 mile trip length limit. We have divided the city up into 3 service areas. You can see here 1, 2, and 3. Now, what happens is impact fees that are collected within those service areas can only be spent within those service areas. That's one of the limitations. So money's collected in that service area gets spent in that same service area. The next exhibit is the water service area, which is the entire study area. So we don't have to break it up into different areas. So this allows cities to collect fees within the entire city study area and then spend them on the most critical projects within the study area. Same with wastewater. Similar type, not exactly the same limits as water, but it's fairly close. Same philosophy. Okay, now we'll move to the, I'll stop there a minute and ask if there's any specific questions with regards to the service area. Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to the capital improvement plan. Because the water and wastewater service areas are single service areas, we're going to flip the order a little bit and how we talk about these, and I will illustrate the water impact fee service area and the water impact fee capital improvement plan project list first. So here's the list of the projects that are identified in the current impact fee capital improvements plan. Now, keep in mind, when you look at this plan, it's focused on growth. So if you talk to Tom and his staff about what their typical 5-year capital improvements plan is, it will have some of these projects, but maybe not all. And it may have identify more maintenance type projects that cannot be on this list. So remember, the key of these projects, they're focused on growth oriented projects. So can they help shore up deficiencies in particular areas? That's a possibility, but they're predominantly focused for providing water infrastructure for future growth. If there's any questions with regards to the water plan before I move to the wastewater? Okay, hearing none, I'll illustrate the wastewater impact fee capital improvements plan. As you notice here, the project area in general that the projects are shown in are similar to the water. As far as general area of the city that would have additional infrastructure needed to accommodate future growth. Any questions on wastewater?
Is that drawn out in red?
Say that again.
Is the red markings, that's where the wastewater lines go?
Those are wastewater, yes. Those are future wastewater lines. And of course, these are more regional type lines. They're larger and would serve more than just a local development. So these are generated based on the city's current water and wastewater master plan.
Thank you.
Good question. Okay, we'll transition to roadway. We've broken these up into the 3 roadway service areas. The project lists are a little bit different. So from a color coding standpoint, you'll see multiple colors, with red being new projects, the blue projects being existing roadways that are widened or widening projects. There's a corridor study listed on here. Planning studies are impact fee eligible. They're growth related or growth oriented. And then lastly, the green dots are intersection improvements, provide additional capacity for future growth.
And John, those intersection are only capacity improvements, no safety improvements or anything. It's strictly capacity. Is that what I'm understanding?
Jeff, do you want to elaborate on what y'all build into the costing of those?
The costing would include what it takes to reconstruct the project for widening. So if it is a true widening project, it's just those 2 additional lanes. In the cases that if you have to widen it and you have to rip up the existing lanes, we would include that cost. So it's the true cost to build a roadway.
Yeah.
However, we take into account the existing demand out there. So if there's existing traffic on the road, we can't charge for existing demands. So it's the true cost minus what the existing demand on the facility is. So
okay, so it is truly just a capacity improvements is where the funding from
correct.
CIP. Okay,
yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Same for intersection.
Yeah,
Same for intersection.
Yeah, like putting a new signal increases capacity. So a signal would be true, or putting turn lanes at an intersection, same concept.
Yeah, Jeff, John had asked about if safety improvements at a particular intersection would be included in that number.
But potentially, we have to justify that a safety improvement also increases capacity.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's look at service area 2. Similar nomenclature, color coding. There's the project list for service area 2. And then lastly, here's the list for service area 3. Of course, you can, once again, these are projects that are more north and east of town that is got more vacant property for growth potential. So you see a few more projects on there. And I'll stop here. Our next transition is to talk about schedule. So I'll stop, and John, and ask you if there are any questions or any of the advisory committee members, if they have any questions throughout the document itself that we can, if we need to go back to and look at, I'll be happy to turn to. If not, we can move on towards schedule and talk about what the next steps are for advisory committee.
Anybody have anything they'd like to ask John or any of his team?
Just a quick question, just so I can, on the roadway service area 2, we all have a 2B from Dixie Boulevard to the city limits. That's Pool Road? Isn't Pool Road by McKinney Park?
I believe that's Murphy Road, isn't it? Oh, yeah. 2D? Is that the one you're talking about?
No, 2B.
Oh, 2B, I'm sorry.
Doesn't Pool Road, isn't that where the lights are at, the Christmas lights and everything?
Mr. Gonzalez, Pool Road runs east and west.
Uh-huh.
And the section that you're looking at would be from Pool Road over by the city shop, running down toward the extents of the city limits on the south side of Dixie.
Yeah, it's just north of the interstate there at Dixie.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sir.
So one of the things I think that John was kind of emphasizing all of this, John Atkins, Mr. Atkins, is that that we're looking for y'all's comments on these things as you see that these projects are things that you think would be important over the next 10-year window. So.
Yeah, so this is what we're doing here this evening. Obviously, it's introducing the information to you, give you an opportunity to ask questions, but obviously we're going to meet again. And so you'll have time to review the information that was provided to you. And then at our next meeting is when y'all would kind of come with your conclusions to it and formulate what your comments would be that would be provided to the city council.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, John, you want for the committee? There's any other questions? Hearing none, I will go ahead and kind of show you where we're at on the schedule. So here in December, we're meeting to review the land use assumptions and the impact fee capital improvements plan. Our next meeting in red will be to meet to recommend approval of the land use assumptions and the impact fee capital improvements plan for city council, and that's when y'all will formulate your comments that will be provided to them. And then in February, we'll move forward to the next step, which is based on this information, we will formulate what the maximum accessible impact fee will be for roadway, water, and wastewater, and give you all an opportunity to review the calculations and how that was done, what that maximum fee could be. And then the next meeting in March would be to meet and recommend approval of the impact fee study to City Council. And y'all can provide recommendations on what they could potentially charge if they so choose. So it will be the City Council's discretion to decide if to implement fees, and if so, what those fees would be. John, that concludes our presentation.
John, one of the things that I think we touched on at the last meeting, and we certainly for the January and February meeting, we wanted to have in spreadsheet format or in some format what the other West Texas communities of similar size are doing, and then you were going to also go into the Metroplex and take moderate size communities there and give us that background so we would not be shooters in the dark initially, right?
That is correct. We'll bring forward what your maximum accessible fees would be, or could. It's what they
could be by statute, correct?
Statute, yep. And then what we can do is then compare those values to the list of communities that you already provided to us, plus a few more. And we will provide that information to you. It's actually not at the next meeting, but the one after that. So
okay.
2 meetings from now in February.
I think that's going to be important for all of us to be able to compare that and see how we stand with peer communities. And just because somebody's doing it doesn't mean we need to, or just because they're not doesn't mean we don't need to. But I wanted to have
some comparisons.
Those comparisons.
Sure. Yeah, it'll also, we're kind of building slowly here, introducing the land use part and drives the infrastructure. And then we will do the calculations, because in the end, what we're looking at is the dollars divided by the growth. And that gives you a dollar per unit of growth that you'll be able to compare to.
John, I have a question, and it might be for Vanessa and Mike. Serving on the city council, are we under the same scrutiny as them that we can't, like for instance, I want to go have lunch with John and discuss this and then go discuss it with another member? Or we're free to do that if we need to?
No, Philly, you would still fall under the open meetings requirements. So certainly you can meet with one member, possibly two, given the size of the group, but I would not meet with more members than that individually. I think there's a topic of that importance. It probably needs to be discussed with the whole group.
Yeah, I think that's important for all of us to hear that, because I was like, I want to reach out and, because each one of us, I believe, have our own field of expertise that probably has more knowledge and experience. So, but I also wanted to know the rules before. So thank you.
Sir.
If we, and certainly we can do as we see fit. Vanessa and John Atkins have given us a schedule, but if we need to have a workshop or something where we need to really brainstorm, I think we can certainly call that. And if we have any questions, need more information, that's what we're here for. So let's don't be constrained just by this schedule, please.
Yes.
That's why you're the chairman, John.
John, you're right. We did build in some time so that in the event that you guys needed additional meetings or needed additional information, we definitely want to make sure that we give that to you and you have enough time to review it to make the recommendations to council as needed. John Atkins, from now until the next meeting, we are needing the committee to give us their comments or any additional recommendations on both the land use assumption and the CIP impact fee, right?
Well, I mean, you can. If we're going to use the next meeting to be the official comments, if you're going to use the minutes from that meeting, it's, that's typically what happens is they formulate it based on a particular meeting. If it could be this one, but we wanted to give enough time for everybody to kind of digest the information since this is brand new for Odessa. And so the actual comments that come out of the next meeting would be the ones that would be the official comments that would be provided to the council.
Okay, so since we do have it on the schedule for the approval of the land use and impact fee CIP, John Atkins and John Landgraf, is it feasible for us to set maybe a time frame in which we want to receive all of the committee's comments so that we can fully discuss those at the January 13 meeting?
Vanessa, I certainly think that's appropriate. I think we just need to, I would say a week before that meeting, if you back that up.
Yes, that would be January 6th.
So if I would like for the committee to study and really look at this from, break it down from if you have any questions, that's time, and we'll just submit those to you, Vanessa or Farrah, either.
Yes, you can submit it to both of us and we can distribute it among the rest.
And then we will incorporate that into the discussion at the next meeting. And I think any questions are on the table and legitimate. There shouldn't be any hesitancy. If you see something that you think's been left out or something's too aggressive in one part of the community or not, that's what we're here for. So we want to look at this thing in a broad sense and then very detailed between now and the 6th of January.
And so while people are reviewing that, if they have questions other than between each of you individually per se, I guess, but if they have a question for for John Atkins or the city, either one, what do we think is the best process for receiving, handling those, Vanessa, the same way? Go to Farrah and you, and copy John Atkins, or what do you think?
They can, I would prefer that it goes through Farrah, if that's okay, Farrah and myself, and then we can vet it through John Atkins, and then if it needs to be vetted that way, just so that we're not having an influx of emails going to different people. If it's a question that I think we're getting from multiple members, then it may be worth us sending an email to everyone out with that response or clarification.
Sounds great. And we can put those responses out on the portal as well.
Yes.
Mr. Landgraf, I can't speak for everybody here, but I think that information that you asked for on the comparisons would help me also create the questions that I would need to, because that's going to help me. Do we have a timeline when we can get that information?
I think what John is telling us, and certainly we can ask him to speed that up. I think the important thing for next month is not necessarily understanding what those fees are yet, or how we compare to our neighbors or anything, but understanding, making sure we're good on the growth, the assumptions for the land use, the population growth, understand that, because that will then dictate how those fees are calculated, and certainly understand the capital improvements plans and what needs to happen to continue this 1% to 2% growth that is being projected.
Okay.
So, and I'm not saying we don't need that, Billy, because I really am very interested in how we compare with our other. I don't want to be the highest or the lowest necessarily, and we'll talk about that at a later time. But
yeah.
I think looking at those is going to be very important. But the thing that we need to do between now and the middle of, or January 13th, is to agree that this is what needs to be funded. Then we'll talk about how we fund that, the fees themselves following that. But we need to kind of understand what we're trying to buy first.
I agree, John. I think part this time again, but I think so. Like you're saying, the first thing is, what are we going to need, and then our calculations can be generated. But also, we are working on getting the information from the other entities that are or are not doing this, so we can make sure we get that put together.
And Tom, certainly this comes to Cindy and Michael and everybody in the upper levels of management. Impact fees are not the only source of funding these capital improvements, and we want to get in and understand how that fits. We haven't had those in the city for forever, yet we've been able to do some things. So understanding the mix of the impact fees versus COs versus bonds versus general revenues versus all the other sources of funds, I think is equally as important to us at some point. Certainly not until after we've defined what we really need, but then what are those other ways that are potentially there that can impact how we establish those fees?
John, you are exactly correct, and that's a great question, and that's certainly a discussion that has to happen with this group. We've certainly have had that discussion with the city council. Certainly when they discussed going in this direction, they had already considered some of those things. But it's important for you as a committee to also understand how that works and what our capacity is for indebtedness. So yes, we will prepare something for you as well. So.
Okay, great. And like I say, I think we're a little premature there, but ultimately before we raise our hand, I think we need to understand that piece of it too. So we're all on the same sheet.
Yes, sir.
I think it's going to be really important for us to know and understand the history of what Odessa has done, and then we can do something if we need to do something different, which is what we're talking about. We need to look at all aspects of it before we're finished, John.
I agree. I think that's where I was headed, Jimmy. So we're good.
perhaps before the next meeting, we can put a draft of what the format of the information would look like and bring to you at that time also to show, that these are the items that we can pull for you and that type of thing. Maybe let you see if that are the things you need.
Okay, great. Does anyone have anything else? Are we good? Everybody understand? I'm sorry?
Am I the only one that can't understand anything April's saying?
We can't understand her.
April, go off video a minute and see if it works better.
All right, let's see. Does this work better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So following up on Filiberto's question about how much does that equal out to for that 1.3% exhibit that we had for the growth rate, the breakdown is on section 1.4 of the LUA CIP report. And we have a table there as well as what that means for residential growth projections as well for reference.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for any staff or for the consultants? If not, I think it's incumbent upon each of us to really study this land use assumptions, make sure we're comfortable with that. Let's identify any questions we have about that, and then certainly look at those capital improvements, understand those, and if we see any shortcomings in that or things we think are too aggressive, that's what we need to all be concentrating on between now and get those comments to Vanessa or Farah by January 6th, and they'll compile that, and that will be the meat of our discussion at our next meeting on the 13th.
Gotcha. Sounds good.
Okay, everybody good with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there being no other business, we can adjourn and start doing our homework.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody have anything before we adjourn?
We don't need to make a
Get well,
motion.
John.
Oh,
I'll take that, Philly, as a motion to adjourn. Second.
done.
All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll adjourn at 4 p.m. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.